Morning, students. This is a Unit 1 review for second semester Algebra 2. This is the deck that I used the day of Class Connect. So I'm just going to scroll through the announcements and start with a vocabulary slide. In this unit, we studied graphs considered or called sinusoidal graphs. Sinusoidal graphs, it's always kind of a strange word, can be either a sine graph or a cosine graph. So we'll just kind of go through. Looks like I jam-packed this slide with vocabulary. So this first graph on the left, this is a sine graph. And I know it's a sine graph because I can locate where it crosses the y-axis. I can watch the graph go up, come back to the midline, go down to the maximum, and come back to the midline. And when the graph makes an S shape, then I know that it is sine. For my cosine graph, again, I can locate where the graph crosses the y-axis, and I can watch the graph go to the midline, go down to the minimum, go back up to the midline, and then up to the max. That makes a valley shape, so I know the graph is cosine. So by looking at one period of the graph, starting where the graph crosses the y-axis, you can tell whether your graph is sine or cosine. The shape of a sine and a cosine graph are consistently wavy. A max is where the graph reaches its highest point. We give a y value for that. A min is where the graph reaches its lowest point, and we give a y value for that also. So an up and down, where that graph is the highest or the lowest. So we're looking at the y value, how high or how low for max and min. We do have equations for sine and cosine graphs. Here is a general form for sine. Here's a general form for cosine. A is always the number in front of sine or cosine. B is always the number in front of your x. And C is always the number on the outside of the equation. It can be added or subtracted. The midline is the line that goes halfway between your max and your min. Your amplitude is the distance from the midline to the max or the min. Your amplitude must always be positive. Your period is the shortest period over where the graph repeats itself. There is an important formula for period. It's 2 pi divided by b. We'll use that several times. And then we know that the frequency is the reciprocal of the period. So for instance, if the period was 2/3, then the frequency would be 3/2. So we would just flip that over. We'll talk a little bit about what the A does. The A in front of each equation is the amplitude. So if this A were 3, the graph would go up and down 3 units from the midline. If this A were 4, the graph would go up and down 4 units from the midline. It's pretty easy to see in an equation. You do have to take the absolute value of A because amplitude is always positive. The B value is going to affect your period because we have this formula. The period is equal to 2 pi divided by b. B is always the number in front of your x. That's also considered the coefficient. And then I have the formula for the frequency. It's the reciprocal of your period. So if the period is A, then the frequency is 1 over A. Don't forget that you can use your TI-84 calculator. You can also use Desmos. You just Google Desmos. It's free. You don't have to even sign up for an account. You can put these equations in your y equals, which is located right here on your TI-84 calculator, and your calculator will graph the equations for you, or you can just enter them in Desmos. We'll start with number 1. Which graph of f of x equals sine of x is transformed to a new graph, g of x, by stretching it vertically by 2? So that means your A is being multiplied by 2 and shifting up 3. That means your C is 3. So we're looking for 2 to be in front. So it would not be these last 2 because I have a 3 here and I have a 1 here. And then we need our C to be 3. C is always the number outside the equation, so we would pick the second answer. Number 2, what is the amplitude of this function? You take your A value. So our A value is -2. We always take the absolute value of A to find the amplitude. So that's going to be the absolute value of -2. And that's going to be +2. So we would check the second answer. There's a really good chance that this review may be the exact review that's in your OHS. So that would be 1.12 unit review, and that would get you some bonus points. Just a little tip there. Number 3, what is the question? What is the equation of the midline? Your midline is always going to be associated with your C value. So if your C value is 5, your midline is always going to have the equation of y equals the C value. So our midline is going to be y equals 5. So we would choose the third answer. Number 4 says, what is the frequency? So remember, frequency is the reciprocal of your period. And so the formula for period is 2 pi over b. So the formula for frequency is going to be b over 2 pi. So we'll take our b value. It's the number being multiplied times your x. So our b value is 1/4. We'll plug that into the formula, 1/4 over 2 pi. We can't have a fraction in a fraction, so we'll do 1/4 divided by 2 pi. That's the same thing as 1/4 times the reciprocal of 2 pi. So my frequency is going to be 1 over 8 pi. So we would choose the first one. Number 5, what is the period of the function? So we can, I would just use my graph here. Always start by where the graph crosses the y-axis. This graph is going down to its midline, then down to its minimum, back to its midline, and then back to its max. So that completes one cycle. We can drop down to the x-axis, and we can tell that happens in pi over 2 units. So that would be the period. You can just look at the graph for that one. In the function f of x, x is replaced with 2x and 1 is added to the function. So we have this function, and then we're going to have a new function. We'll just call it g of x. And it says that x is replaced with 2x, so we still have the -3. X is replaced with 2x, and then it says 1 is added to the function. So the 2x is going to affect my period, because here we had a 1x, so our b was 1. Now our b is 2. And then this 1, this is your C value. This is going to send the graph up 1. So we know it's not down 1. We know it's not down 1. So we can eliminate the first and the third, and then we can figure out what's going on here. This is the graph is vertically stretched. So if it's vertically stretched, then they're going to be making this number larger. So it's not vertically stretched. So we can eliminate this one, and it would be a horizontal compression. You could also put those two equations in Desmos and look at those that way. Number 7, over a 24-hour period in a harbor tide could be modeled by one period of a sinusoidal function. This tide measures 4.35 feet at midnight, rises to a height of 8.3 feet, and then falls to a low of 0.4. And then it rises to 4.3 feet by the next midnight. What is the equation for this function? They're telling you it is sine, where x represents time since the beginning of the 24-hour period. That models the situation. So for this one, I sketched it out because I'm a visual person. So I looked at the numbers they gave me. They gave me 4.3 feet. They gave me 8.3 feet, and they gave me 0.4 feet, and they gave me 4.3 feet again. So 24 hours, that's going to be, hours is going to be on your x-axis. And then feet is going to be on your y-axis. So what I did is I went to 8.3 would be the highest. I didn't even make this like perfectly. I just went up to 8.3. My lowest is 0.4. And then 4.3 would be in the middle. 4.35. So what it's saying here is it's saying that the tide starts at 4.35, and then it goes up to 8.3, and then it comes back down to 4.3, and then it goes down to 0.4, and then it comes back to 4.3. So this is a picture of what they're saying is going on here. And they're saying that this happens this happens in a 24-hour period. So this would be 24, this would be 12, this would be 6, this would be 18. Those are hours. So if we think about the midline being here, the distance we go up to the max and down to the mins is, we can do 8.3 minus 4.35. That's going to be important. That's going to be our A value. So 8.3 minus 4.35, it's going to be 3.95. So our amplitude is 3.95. So it can't be this one and it can't be this one. And then both of these say C is 4.35. That's this line right here called the midline. So the only difference between the first answer and the second answer is that B is 1/12 in this equation, and B is 1/24 in this equation. So what I have to do is I have to take the formula for a period, 2 pi over B, and I have to set it equal to 24 hours because that's the period of this graph. Then I'll cross multiply, so I'll get 24B is equal to 2 pi. Solve for B by dividing both sides by 24, and B is going to come out to be pi over 12. So I would choose the first one. That's been the hardest problem so far. This is number 7. Let's take a look at number 8. 8 says the table of values shows the height of a car of a Ferris wheel as it travels in a circular motion. Choose all the statements that are true. So if we kind of look at the y value, which is the height of the Ferris wheel, we go from 30 up to 55, back to 30, down to 5, and then we start the process again. So then we go back to 30, 55, 35, and 30. So one cycle, if we think about this on an XY graph, so our highest is 55. So we'll just kind of go up here and make 55. At the middle, we've got a 30. And then our lowest is 5. So at 0, we start at 30. And then at 3 seconds, here's 3 seconds, we go up to 55. At 6 seconds, we're back down here. At 9 seconds, we are at 5. And then at 12 seconds, we're back at 30. So again, this would be a sine graph because it is shaped like an S. The distance, so this distance is 25. This is 55. So we're going up 25, down 25. So our amplitude is 25. What that really means is that means that the radius of the Ferris wheel, so up and down, if we think about a Ferris wheel and we think about how far it goes up 25 feet and then it goes down 25 feet. So that would represent the radius if you look at it kind of as a circle. So I would check the radius of the wheel is 25 yards. The car makes one complete revolution in 12 seconds. That's true because once we mapped it out, we went to 12. The maximum height is 5. That's not true. The maximum height is 55 yards. And then the last one, the car is loaded at 0 seconds. Then people are loaded at the minimum height. At 0 seconds, you're right here. So you're at 30. I don't think we want to load at 30. I think we want to load at 5. I don't think we can jump up to 30 yards. So it says the car is loaded at 0 seconds. Then people are loaded at the minimum height. That's not true. So we would just check those two. All right. I hope this was helpful. Remember, if you're still confused, there are all types of help that you can get. I will send this video out to you.